it's almost a instant avenue into the subconscious, in a sense, and it's almost like inviting people to come into their dreams. The love of color or painting or music or performance, certainly emotion, that create this very inimitable art form of cinema. That's what makes it immensely powerful to at least make. For me, the most powerful experiences have been the quiet cinema. The cinema that is seasonal, which comes upon you and suddenly takes you to another place. The transportive nature of it is extraordinary.
Checkmate!
She won! She won!
Fiona's won!
Hey, Joseph, you are not serious. A girl has given you checkmate.
What?
Unlike many filmmakers, I did not set out to become one. I thought of myself as an actor, as a performer, as a writer, but it was coming to this country, to America, when I was about 19, 20, and in a film course in college, and it was the experience of seeing Chris Marker's La Jetée that completely, galvanized me, changed me, and made me understand that it's possible to do this. It's possible to do this with a great imagination and with not much else. La Jetée is a series of stills, that became the most extraordinary piece of cinema, So it was Chris Marker, it was Jean Rouch, and then finally, it's amazing to say this, but Satyajit Ray, from my own country, but in India at that time, in the 70s, it was very difficult to see the Satyajit Ray films. I actually saw them for the first time in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the ability to really capture the incredible complexity and poetry of my own homeland in a way that Ray does time and time again. It was that combination of films that made me think that, I could really have a place in this, because these kinds of cinema engaged with life, engaged with people as they are, as opposed to some sort of fictitious, artificial Bollywood universe, and it had the ability to hold a mirror to the world, and not in a didactic way necessarily, but in a way that could wake people up. And so that started me off. Indian classical music is what I breathe with. I listen to, Ustad Vilayat Khan, who's an incredible legend in the sitar, pretty much every morning, for a few hours. The whole understanding and the notion of an Indian rag, which is in its core an improvisation based on a core of notes that defines one rag from another. But that improvisation, much like jazz and yet not as freewheeling, is an incredible... Firstly, it's a great pleasure, but also it's a way that makes me understand rhythm and pace and climax, and just rhythm, I think, is such an essential part of cinema making. So Indian classical music is my oxygen, and I have several great players that I listen to, from Ustad Vilayat Khan to what is now defined as Pakistani music, Qawwali, Sufi, Khayal music. So in musical terms, I would say, the music of the East. Literature, we grew up on a very steady diet of initially English literature, being a colonial hangover that India is. Shakespeare, and the great poets. But it was Indian and Pakistani writing in English that really has been a huge inspiration. In fact, a lot of my work is based on it. Mohsin Hamid's Moth Smoke, or Reluctant Fundamentalist, Vikram Seth's A Suitable Boy, which I'm currently making, Jhumpa Lahiri's amazing work of writing between worlds. So the contemporary Indian, Pakistani, sort of Asian writers are a big source of inspiration to me. But in terms of the real, sort of another very core influence for me is photography, is contemporary and classic photography. So there's not a film I make without, again, dipping into the treasure trove of Henri Cartier-Bresson or William Eggleston or Gary Winogrand or Arche or Carthage. For me, photography and the study of how to make a frame in fact, that's how I came to filmmaking, is first through the study of photography. And that continues to be a cornerstone for me in terms of how I approach just looking at the world, how to understand a frame, the sacredness, really, of a frame. I like to make films that I think can amplify the world, if it would be so egotistical to say that, but, that would add to the world, that need to be in the world, not films that pretty much are there already. I abhor remakes. I don't go into just making a film for its own sake. I've had that privilege of being able to sift, by having a modest life. I don't need to just constantly be making them, So I also am a homemaker and a mother and I have a multi-armed family life, and I honor that life. And I know when I make a film, which I must do because I'm obsessed and that is what I do, that it'll be a sacrifice to the other parts of my life, and it has to be worth it, When I was once offered Harry Potter 4, and I was and I thought I must take that seriously because my son learned how to read from Harry Potter. So, but I was just about to shoot The Namesake, and my son and I went through all these Warner Brothers meetings, and it was very moving to London, 3 years. I mean, I was really contemplating it, but torn because I was engaged with really another project of my own, which was The Namesake. And I remember my 14-year-old telling me, Mama, any good director can make Harry Potter, but only you can make The Namesake. And it was such a epiphany, that this boy had given me, this permission to let go of something that I thought was important for him. But that's what it is for me, making films is a choice. It's also a disease. I'm sick with it, and you have to choose, so many things. So therefore, the subject that I make films about has to be actually all important and obsessive enough for me to live with that subject for easily 2 years and sometimes 5. The Reluctant Fundamentalist took me 5 years to make and finance because no one wanted to touch such a hot button, But I am a long distance runner, and I believe I'm not really, but in my head I am. I do believe in lasting the marathon, in order to say what you have to say. To make films, you must be a student of life. I believe that you have to fully engage with life, with politics, with human emotion, with questions of right and wrong. You must have that foundation, of curiosity and learning in order to know what you must say about it. So the young people who just get out of high school and go right into a filmmaking course, I lament, because I think it is not just about knowing how to use a camera, And now with the democratization of technology and the fact that you can make a film from your phone, and a pretty good film too, it's even more confusing because people don't realize that craft is important, but what you have to say is even more important. So one, to engage with life. And to do that fully and completely, because only at its fullest will it lead you to want to make something of it. It is more and more important in today's age, and in any age, but today more than ever, to show the world in its particularity and in its localness in order for it to really be universal. And film does that time and time again, in the purest of ways sometimes. And I think in university, like with me, it was in university that I was opened to kind of the womb of cinema, and an ability to look at a Buñuel and look at a Marker and then look at then Fellini and the Satyajit Ray and, the Japanese cinema, Ozu, we had, it was extraordinary in terms of just opening the window to the world, and it's one of the great joys of teaching in university for me. Sometimes I teach at Columbia. It's you're coming to terms with the kind of purity of the student learning and yourself returning from the sometimes fracas of the industry. You're returning to the womb of purity in cinema and remembering again how it is to do something that just has to be done, and done at the most greatest artfulness, So I think it's, in this, especially in today's America where the other has become the enemy almost, it is more and more vital to open the world to people, here. And cinema does it like no other way because it makes you recognize yourself in the frame, regardless of it being from Japan or Russia or India or wherever. And that's key because that's the only way we will work as one world.